Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show this Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you guys here. Now, I'm going to tell you guys what. Our ancestors, they learned a number of skills back when we didn't live so much in cities and stuff, and we had dangers that affected us. Like, we might live on a cliffside, and maybe there's caves along the cliffside, and maybe that was a good protected place to raise our families and stuff. And we used to hunt in the woods nearby. And maybe there was animals living in those woods is very, very dangerous. But we learned skills to cope. And part of these skills was assessing dangers. Looking and seeing dangers and assessing dangers. But there was a problem that came up. I want to talk about it. And this was a coping mechanism for our early ancestors. It was called something that was called normalcy bias. What is normalcy bias? It says it's a cognitive bias which leads people to disbelieve. I didn't read that right. Give me a second. It says it's a cognitive bias which leads people to disbelieve or minimize threat warnings. Well, why was that needed for our ancestors? Normalcy bias. It actually acted as a protector for them, because if there's a danger out there, and because of our cognitive function of being able to assess danger, we would just stay in the cave all day and say, I'm not going to go out there with those dangerous animals today. They're not going to hurt me. This is a better way to cope and say, okay, I'm going to live through this. I'm going to get out there, I'm going to take my spear or whatever, and I'm going to go out there and get one of those animals to bring home for food. This was a way of coping so that humanity was able to survive by creating this normalcy bias. In other words, saying, I can handle this. Well, yeah, maybe the guy went out there and he got caught by one of those big dangerous animals and it killed him. But still, they had to get out there in order to obtain food and stuff. So this was something that developed through mankind that's very much embedded in our psyche, to have normalcy bias. And people say, See, it says, consequently, individuals underestimate the likelihood of a disaster when it might affect them and its potential adverse effects. A normalcy bias causes many people not to adequately prepare for natural disasters, market crashes, and calamities caused by human error. It says about 70% of people reportedly display normalcy bias during a disaster. Normalcy bias can manifest in response to warnings about disasters and actual catastrophes. In other words, they say, that can't happen. Because things have been normal all along, they perceive things as advancing in a normal way into the future. So, what's the second thing in all of this? Is risk. What's the risk? Estimating the probability of occurrence of risk. Probabilities. This is what we're dealing with here. And it's what I deal with on this channel. I deal with probabilities of a crisis occurring of epic proportions. Now, if we went back, say I was on this channel and it was like 50 years ago and I was out here talking to you guys about the risk of a probability of something disastrous occurring, it was not near as likely back then. And also you have to understand in assessing the probability of a risk of a dangerous situation, time is a factor in this. We look at the history of the Earth going back. We see these events occur on a certain frequency of intervals. This is why things have been written about this, like the fourth turning. It's this. The things can only go along in a wonderful period where we can all be happy together on Earth and everybody can trade freely and there's money flowing in the system and everything else. the probability of that continuing day after day after day, year after year, and decade after decade, as that advances, the probability of that coming to an end increases. And it's the same law of probability that would work in a casino. If somebody had like a dice and they were rolling it, say to win, say they had to roll a 4. I don't know, I'm just making this up, but say they had to roll a 4. So first they roll a 4 and they win. Then they roll a 4 again and they win. Every time they roll a 4, the probability of them rolling another 4 increases that they're not going to be able to. It's exponentially increases that they can't continue to do that. Because the law of probabilities is against them at that point. And that's the way with us. Every time we move another decade into this period of, I'll call it a Goldilocks period, it's more likely it's going to come to an end. We already see it. See the law of probability affecting us right now, because in 2020 we started to have problems in this Goldilocks period. I mean, it just started to evaporate on us. And we said, hey, what's up? And we started to talk about things like the new normal. We were looking for a normal. We wanted a new normal, but we haven't got it yet. And in fact, if we look at the real situation in the world without blinders on and say, what's going on right now? Well, we got two enormous problems that nobody has a solution to. And one is war. In these countries that are preparing for war, like North Korea, China. Russia's already in a war. Okay? This is an enormous problem that could just blow completely out of proportion. And we got a second enormous problem, is that the entire Western Hemisphere, the entire Western system, and in fact it carries over to the entire world, has built and structured their entire financial system on a Ponzi scheme. This is the biggest one of all. This is a problem that can't go away, and it can only ultimately lead to a world-ending catastrophic event. And as the days progress, we can see this event getting closer and closer. And what is this event, this catastrophic worldwide event? Well, let's get the chart started right here. Take a look. You know, this is what I was looking at, risk management, probability and occurrence of risk. Anyway, and normalcy bias. I'm sorry I didn't have the charts on earlier so you guys could see what that was. As we move forward, we can see this whole thing, especially with the financial system, we can see it can't last forever. It's moving toward a cliff edge. Especially, and what really unnerves me is these two problems. War, on one hand, and the financial problems on the other hand. They seem to kind of interact with each other. You know? And this is why Gerald Celente, he says, oh yeah, as soon as they get in economic trouble, they lead you to war. There might be a lot of truth in that. World leaders trying to divert attention away from it's like, look over here, not over here. Don't blame me for this, blame me for that, or whatever. You know, trying to wiggle out. That's your world leaders you got, because they, I mean, let's face it, these are the sort of people who use your tax-paying dollars to build these epic weapons. Epic weapons. They know full well if they launch those epic weapons over there, that new epic weapons are going to get launched back at them over here. I call these weapons boomerang weapons, because when you launch one, an hour later, another one's going to come back at you. They're going to boomerang and come back at you. Not the exact same weapon, but the other guy's. He's got them too. And this has led the nations to say something that's called mutually assured destruction. So, normalcy bias, we have risk management, and the occurrence of risk, and how we assign risk, and how we see the probability of a monster-sized disaster coming. We can look ahead. We're not like the animals. We are able to see risk ahead of time to avoid a risky situation. But at the same time, we've developed, because we have that ability, and that ability would have destroyed us. In other words, we look out there, we can assess risk. Say your ancestors looked out there and they said, hey, there's a dangerous animal over there. I ain't going to leave the cave today. I ain't going to go out there with him. I'll get torn to pieces because he's assessing risk. Now, that's where normalcy bias came along. To say, hey, you know what? It's not so bad. You're hungry right now. You go out there and kill that animal and you're going to have some food. And yeah, I can do it. They normalcy bias set in. They said, yeah, my neighbor, he got one of those animals last week. Why can't I do it? I can do it too. Sure, I can. And you start to settle back down. Your adrenaline settles back down, and then you decide you can do it. This is a survival instinct. Normalcy bias is actually a survival instinct that we have that allows us to continue even in the face of this world right now. That, in fact, normalcy bias is so strong, it's such a strong coping mechanism that the people of the world right now are caught in this trap where they cannot totally see the risk, or they don't want to see the risk because it frightens them. And they'd rather live in their little world, normalcy bias, and they're just like, oh, everything's peaceful, everything's good, and I can do this. Yeah, that's good to a point. But you got to understand, it's this ability to see these disasters ahead that's also enabled us to survive. So, keeping your head in the sand all the time is maybe not such a good thing. And that's why I've been warning you guys, hey, this is coming. Massive. When you finally get there, it's probably just going to be the lights are going to go out. And you're not going to be able to ever, for the longest time, find out. Maybe never, because if you don't survive it, you will never find out what turned your lights off or turned your lights out. And what I mean by that, I mean the grid going down. And if you think the grid going down is just something you can cope with easily, well, maybe you've been through a few grid downs. I'm sure we all have. We're going along watching a show or something on TV, and all of a sudden, bunk, there's no show. The lights are out in your house. You're looking around for a flashlight if it happens at night. We've all been through that. But that situation, can get really dicey if it continues on week after week after week. Dicey how? You guys are saying, well, dicey how? Dicey in the fact that we need that power grid in order to survive, and when that's taken away from us, we're basically on our own. There's no emergency services anymore. After a certain point, after about 2 weeks goes by, things start to break down. Even emergency services and stuff, they run out of fuel. The police don't even have fuel in their tanks any longer because the gas stations can't get electricity to run their pumps. And the whole thing starts to break down. They can't get the trucks to the pumps to provide gasoline. I've been through all this a few weeks ago. There's 2 big hurricanes this year, and one of them struck and I was right in it. And I was in the area of the aftermath. And I'm going to tell you, it was so bad there was no light pollution at night. You could see all the stars perfectly because there was no light over wide areas, state-sized areas. Well, I was in Canada, province-wide areas of no light pollution because there was no lights. Everybody that lost power for the very longest time. Okay, and what happened was emergency services got hampered to the point where, yes, they were still able to get fuel, but just barely. Most people were not able to get fuel. Gas stations went out of commission. They ran out of fuel. We don't have any redundant systems in place in the system for these kind of emergency situations. There's no redundant systems in place. That means you're all on your own. Power grid goes down for extended period of time. People are going to run out of medication. There's going to be no police service because they'll run out of gas to get to you. It's just the whole thing becomes a total wipeout mess. And so that's what we might be actually headed toward. Like I say, if you survive through this whole thing, on the other side, then you'll get information of who, why, and when, and how it happened after things are restored. But you got to have enough momentum on this side, enough food put away, enough water put away, enough supplies put away to carry you right through that it's like jumping across a chasm. Okay? You got this big cliff edge, and there's ground on the other side. It's like 10 feet over there. You got to get running real fast in order to jump across there and make it to the other side. If you're not going fast enough, you're going to hit that cavern wall over there and slide down all the way down 200 feet down onto the rocks below. So you got to get enough momentum going. And that momentum is your food and water supplies and medical supplies and things like that to make it to the other side. And I'm thinking this chasm might be as big as 6 months wide. So we're talking feet on a cliff edge. Can you jump across 10 feet, 10 foot wide, you know? In this case, it'll be a 6 foot wide chasm or so. 6 months. You got to be able to fly through the air for 6 months with your food supplies. Or maybe 4 months or something like that. Before things will start to get, a little bit of order will start to get restored again. And this is what I'm thinking could happen. And I'm not looking with normalcy bias. I'm looking seriously at what could happen next. Let's get in there and look at the markets, because I've been talking an awful lot here. But you guys need to hear all this, because you need to cut through that normalcy bias now at this point. You got no time left. The financial system right now is getting ready for a cataclysmic event of unprecedented proportions. It's going to make 2008 look small. We're right on the edge of it, and all even in Germany, they're talking, hey, you better prepare with food and water. They're telling people right now. Well, I'm going to tell you what, we got financial experts in the system, real experts, and they're saying, hey, this thing's going to hit imminent within the financial system. But not only that, what do you think's going to happen over there in Russia? What makes a soldier in the modern day over, say, a Roman warrior with his lance and his shield and his sword? How well do you think the lance, shield, and sword would be effective against a modern soldier with a high-powered weapons? How well do you think he'd fare? He wouldn't fare at all. That's because he doesn't have any ammunition. Well, okay, Russia's running out of ammunition. They got all kinds of men, but they're running out of ammunition. And America and all their NATO allies, they got ammunition coming in there to Ukraine. Like, oh my gosh, the ammunition they got. And that makes all the difference in the world. So what do you think's going to happen a few months from now when Russia starts to get on their back foot? Maybe by spring, I don't know, I'm just guessing. But at that same time is when we're going to hit this wall with the financial situation. So these two things are going to collide together. And you think that the Ukraine is just going to say, hey, sure, Russia, you're on your back foot now, and we're just going to back off. We're not going to launch any attacks into Russian sovereign territory or anything like that. We're just going to back off. Because you're not having a good, you're running out of ammo. It's okay. Okay, we'll just let off on you. We'll just give you a break. You think they're going to give them a break? No way. And Russia's already, that's part of Russia's thing, or mandate, that somebody starts to attack them on their own home soil. Well, that's when they can use the big weapons, just the big weapons, either strategic ones or tactical ones. Well, what's the world going to think of that? I mean, it's one thing. We got all these people out here who have normalcy bias, okay? Well, they can keep that normalcy bias provided it's not made real to them. It's like theoretical. Will Russia attack? Nah. And some people are saying, well, I think maybe they will. I'm a little bit frightened of that, And other people, no, they'll never do it, and all this that's talk. It's talk because it hasn't happened yet. But what do you think would happen if all of a sudden there was a mushroom cloud go off over there in Ukraine? Well, now it's not talk anymore. Now it's become a reality. And these people with normalcy bias, suddenly they snap out of it. It's like a dream that they're in, like, oh, that can never happen. All of a sudden it happens, they're like, oh my God. For real? They look on their TikTok or whatever. For real? That's really happening. And then the fear comes. Then the fear sets in. There's no more shield against the fear anymore. See, that normalcy bias, that's the shield against the fear. But suddenly, the gut-wrenching fear comes. It's become real. They can't deny it. They can't use their normalcy bias anymore. That shield's been evaporated. The monster has evaporated the shield. It's gone. And it would be all the people on Earth. They would just like all of a sudden wake up from this and they'd say, oh my gosh, it's really happening. They're going to blow the world up. With the weapons, I mean, they have charged us taxes for years. We've sitting there, we work half of the year to give money to them. And they don't ask us, oh, we're going to build all these nuclear weapons so we can blow you to pieces. They don't ask. They just build them. And they've built them for years, and they've done this. And they've taken our hard work and labor, and they've built these nuclear weapons. Now they got a button that they can blow us all up. Both sides. So, I mean, yeah, it's not your side that's going to blow you up. It's the other side. But it's only going to happen because both sides built all these nuclear weapons, and they used your taxpayer. So over in Russia, they used Russian people's rubles. They worked them to death, for crying out loud, so that they could build these big, enormous warheads aimed at us. And over here, we've done the same thing. This is what the politicians have done to you. They have made an unsecure future for you and your children. Okay, silver price today is $21.06. It's up 22 cents on the day so far. I talked about this in other shows. What can happen with all this is we can get something, an event that's never been seen before on the face of the earth. The human species is all interconnected, like a hive of bees. And animals are interconnected this way. Cows, the same thing. They're all interconnected. They don't know that they're all interconnected, but they are. They'll all move in unison. You ever seen a big school of fish? Like out in the ocean, they're filming and they got a big school of fish, and all the fish go that way all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden they go back the other way again. All of them in unison. And it's absolutely coordinated. It's instantaneous. Well, it's the same way with a herd of cows. A massive herd of cows out in the plains. And all of a sudden, bang! They all stampede all at once at the same time. Humanity's the same way. And so what we haven't seen is fear can generate a stampede. And what does it look like? What is it anyway? Because we've never seen it before. Just because we've never seen it before doesn't mean it doesn't exist. They have impressed upon us for the last 100 years how bad nuclear weapons are and how we will all die if they are used. Do you realize what kind of fear that'll generate in the world if they actually do use a nuclear weapon? And how fear is what generally triggers stampedes, like amongst cattle and animals and everything else. So what would a human stampede look like? Well, I've never seen it before, so I can't really tell you exactly, but all I can tell you is the people would just basically drop everything that they're doing and come to a realization, oh my God, we're all going to die. And then the fear motivates them to action, whatever that action is. You guess for yourself what it would be. I haven't seen it before, so I don't know exactly, but I know it wouldn't be pretty. Well, that helps again to bring the system down. So we got the human stampede, we got the financial system collapsing, and the threat of war over here. And they're all coming together simultaneously, it looks like, for 2023. There you have it. That's what it looks like. 2023 is just going to be a year for the record books. Probably the end of things as we know it. I mean, they plagued with fire. They brought it on themselves. Sitting in their laboratories, playing with gain-of-function research, thinking that nothing could ever happen. You know, and launching wars that they don't even call wars, thinking nothing can ever happen. They basically making themselves rich and prosperous and famous on the backs of all of us. You know, so on one side of it, they deserve what's coming. the bad guys. But us, the common, ordinary people, we don't deserve any of this. We never asked for any of this. We don't deserve any of this. And it's just an absolute debacle. Anyway, 21.06 for silver today, up 22 cents, which is good because I think a lot of people that prepare, and have been preparing for years, the good people, the honest people, the salt of the earth, my audience, it's good to see the price of silver finally going up a little bit. And keep going up. Don't keep knocking this down. You know, we want to see it go up because, you know, I mean, we are the salt of the earth, and this is the money of the people. Silver. Gold, 1742. It's up $4.10 on the day so far. We're looking at cryptocurrencies, 800 billion. 16,187 on Bitcoin. It's just barely staying above the... I'm going to tell you, it could be a really big This is not going away, by the way. It's not going to go to zero. It might go down a lot more, but it's not going to go away. It's not going to go down to zero. And in the future, when the fiat currencies finally do collapse in value, this stuff could be worth a lot. Gold and silver could be worth a massive amount too. So it doesn't matter, you know, I mean, hang on to it all. All your non-dollar denominated assets, and I've been telling you guys this for a long time. And you might get a little licking on the cryptos if that's your one you choose, more so than the... But in the end, it's the end that counts. It's the end of the game that counts. You know? Okay. Let's move on and take a look at the Dow Jones today, which is up 278 points. Unfrickin' believable. 293 right now. It doesn't even... It's starting to... So it's getting up so high now. I mean, it's back where it was way back in... January of 2022. I mean, look at it. It's ridiculous. It's just this bounce is so high. Man, I'm telling you, what's going on in the world? I mean, if it was me, I'd just sell that rally. I mean, you know, but I mean, I said that yesterday and it's went up 300 more. Holy moly. Crude oil, 83 today. Now, I'm not giving you financial advice when I say to sell that rally. I'm just saying what I would do. It's just me, you know. You hang on to it until it's whatever. I mean, do whatever you want. Sell it, hang on to it. Whatever. You can do whatever you want. Crude oil today is 80.83. It's up 79 cents on the day so far. So it's back up above 80 bucks. Move index 132, starting to get back up where it should be. Bonds and rates today. We're seeing long end of the yield curve falling. Middle of the range of the yield curve. Look at this. A 1-year treasury is 4.7 basis points. And we got a 30-year at 3.8 basis points. You want to talk about an inversion? It's a whole percentage point inversion if you buy a 1-year over 30 years. Well, you know, this helps. I think the 10-year is they base the mortgages on 10 and 30 years, don't they? And we're low, much lower than the short-term yields. You know, so. This shows investors, you know, how they feel about it all. They don't want to carry money for very long. First off, not going to get very much yield. Anyway, 107.39 for the dollar index, and the dollar has been dropping. It's dropping very slowly today. Dollar's going to stay strong until the pivot comes. We are going to get the pivot. You got to be patient. But when the pivot comes now, they've went too far. They've went too deep. They've dug too deep now at this point. You know, it's like I was watching Munster's show on YouTube this morning, and he went down. He went too deep into the ground doing something or another. The big monster, you know, the big Frankenstein monster, and he broke a pipe. and then the water came gushing out. Well, that's the Fed. They've dug too deep now. They're going to rupture a pipe, and that's it, guys, very soon. And they're not going to be able to fix it with just saying, hey, we're going to pivot. They ain't going to do it. They ain't going to cut it, because the momentum that they've created, they're creating such deflationary pressures that they're going to have to go much deeper than just saying, okay, we're going to drop interest rates now, and we're going to quit quantitative tightening. That ain't going to cut it anymore. Now they're going to have to do stimulus. And they're going to have to also do some sort of programs to make these companies that start to go bankrupt whole again. And the only thing they can do is make more monetary units, create more debt, and that's what they're going to have to do. And so they've only got inflation down. They haven't completely destroyed inflation. Incentive to build things and manufacture things is just flying out the window. So as you have no manufacturing going on, you're going to have prices continue to rise. And as we don't have any fertilizer, you're going to have food prices continue to rise. And as we have droughts, you're going to have food prices continue to rise. So food inflation is going to continue upwards. At the same time, manufacturing's off, so any goods is the only thing that might come down in price some is maybe services and stuff, and not that much on that even. So we're in a world that's embedded in inflation, and they're just destroying the economy, and we're creating these imbalances, disinflationary imbalances in the system. That's all they're doing, and it's going to take a lot to fix it now. They've dug too deep. They've ruptured a pipe in the ground, and it's just going to be a total mess. And all these things are coming together to start at the first quarter 2023. It's just going to be a total. I think it's going to be a total wipeout. I wouldn't be at least a bit surprised now at the early part of 2023, and this is why I'm really getting in there and warning you guys right now. Maybe January, February, or March. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if all of a sudden, boink, your power goes out. And you don't know what happened to cause it. And I mean, it just takes months for it to come back on. And the world just disintegrates into, you better take care of yourself. You better be ready to take care of yourself and your family when this thing comes. And you'll be happy when it's over. Like, I'm not talking about be happy as in you'll have nothing and be happy. You'll be happy to be alive because you made it through it. Maybe other people who didn't pay any attention, they might not make it through. Thank you guys for listening to my show. I know it was a little bit long this morning, but I mean, I got to do this now because we're getting too close. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.